Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pinken channel and welcome to a new series that we're going to be rolling out over the next couple of weeks. And this is looking into the players who have been out on loan from Norwich City this season, speaking to people who've watched them closely during their time away and getting their thoughts and feelings on not just the season that they've had, but maybe about the season that they could that is to come with Norwich City. So episode 1 brings us to Walsall, and it brings us to Walsall reporter George Bennett, and it brings us to Emmanuel Adegboyega as well, and he is going to be the starting place for this series of conversations. So, George, thank you very much for coming on and putting up with various technical difficulties and time delays that we've had so far in this chat. So, I do appreciate it. Emmanuel Adegboyega obviously joined Walsall on loan in January. What can you tell me about the season and half a season that he's had in League Two with the club?
Yeah, well, it was short, but it was very, very sweet. To begin with, I remember Southwell saying at the time that he was looking at him while he was still at Drogheda, so before, prior to the move to Norwich City, and clearly Manny felt that the prospect of joining a Championship club with the possibility of doing what he did with Walsall was a brighter prospect, and you could clearly see that there's some talent about the lad. And for the first few weeks, I think the first 5 games, he wasn't really getting a look in. He made his debut from the bench in the 4-0 defeat against Southampton in the FA Cup, but in the league, he kind of had to bide his time. And one of the things that Matt Sadler praised him for was his attitude during that period, where he was frustrated with the lack of minutes that he was getting to begin with, and it took an injury to Priestley Farquharson just before half-time in the 2-1 win over Mansfield, which at the time I think Walsall had gone 5 games without a win. And Adegboyega came on the pitch, got caught out for the first goal, but the most important thing about it was that it didn't faze him. And after that, he just seemed to go from strength to strength and scored the winning goal and capped his debut in style, and that set the tone for what was a really productive loan spell, and also what was an incredible run of scoring form, which I think we've spoken about previously, with 3 goals in his first 4 appearances. It earned him the EFL Young Player of the Month in February. He was a fox in the box, really. And Walsall had lost Freddie Draper, who scored 10 goals in 21 games, and it seemed like they had a centre back replacing him for a period of time. And you could clearly see that he's a young player with lots of talent. His attitude was first class, and one thing that he spoke about in, I think it was the first interview I had with him actually after the Mansfield game, was his transition from a midfielder to a defender, which had only happened not long prior to him coming to England. I think it was only 2 years ago. So you could see that in his game, the way that he played, a modern centre-back who's comfortable with the ball. I think in the end it was a good loan spell, albeit towards the end he kind of lost his place in the team. But I would say it was definitely a successful spell.
Yeah, and talk to me a little bit about that goal scoring run of form, because it was incredible, and I'm sure there will be Norwich fans out there who maybe aren't familiar with it. So talk to me just about what he did and the type of goals that he was scoring as well during that run of form.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a case of being a fox in the box, like I said there. The goal against Mansfield was a near post header into the far corner. I mean, Walsall have had a great record from set pieces this season. I believe at one stage they were right up there in terms of, there was a stat that came out around the end of March where they were tied with Arsenal for the most set piece goals. And I think in the end it was a third of their 69 goals came from set pieces, and Adegboyega was clearly a beneficiary of that. His goal against Morecambe was kind of from a second ball, where he was there to kind of tap in the rebound, and again at the back post from a set piece, and for the goal against Accrington. So definitely there he established himself, someone who's capable of putting the ball in the back of the net from set piece situations, and can be an aerial presence inside the box. So yeah, definitely got those predatory instincts in there.
And tell me a little bit as well about the sort of system and sort of way that Walsall play, because I think that's always important context, and maybe how well he adapted to that coming in January, like you say, maybe having to deal with and I remember speaking to him. I think you were on the call as well when I was speaking to him, and he kind of spoke about how he had to overcome that sort of frustration initially, because you come into a club as a lone player and you probably expect to go straight away, don't you, and be dropped into the starting 11. He didn't necessarily have that. So talk to me a little bit about sort of his role in the team and the way that Walsall played as well, and how well he sort of stood up to both of those things.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, it was the injury to Priestley Farquharson that kind of presented him with the chance to come into the team. The back three before that had very much been David Adegboyega, who was on loan from Stoke City, another Irishman who was playing on the right side of that defence, and he was kind of really being guided by two more experienced players in the shape of Farquharson and Daniels. Both of those got injured. Walsall then had kind of a newfound back three in Taylor Allen on the left-hand side, and Adegboyega came into the centre. So, and Matt Sadler very much a manager who likes his wide centre backs to kind of push on, link the play, and Adegboyega thrived in that role really, and you could see those. As I said about his midfield background, he kind of used that experience to his advantage, and his passing range was impressive. I think there was an assist for the goal against Salford later in the season, a winner where he played the ball forward with a fantastic raking long ball. So he's clearly got that in his locker, and yeah, he adapted to the system well, and that back three, especially during the 6-match winning streak, I didn't even allude to that. His introduction to the side coincided with that, and not just coincided with it. His introduction was very important to that run as well. In his first 4 games, he scored 3 goals, but in the game he didn't score, he also kept Walsall's only away clean sheet of the season and was really impressive in the 2-0 win against Harrogate. So you could still see there was maybe a rawness to his game, which a loan spell like Walsall would have helped with. But you just got the sense that there's a player with a promising future there.
And in terms of you watching him this season, where do you sort of grade where his performances are at the moment? Because there's obviously lots of conversations, particularly Norwich, who, as I'm sure you've seen, are now going in a different direction with a head coach. They want to play a lot more younger players. Is he someone that you have watched this season and felt that his performances are currently above where he was performing, i.e. he looks sort of too good to be in League Two? Is he someone that you feel it's a little bit too soon for him to walk into a Championship side? Where do you gauge sort of where he is based on the performances that you've watched this season? I appreciate that, as you say, that isn't a whole amount of data that you've got there to work with.
Yeah, it's difficult to kind of gauge whether he can make that step up from League Two to the Championship, but I think his performances bode well to suggest that he is destined for a career at a higher level, especially to come into a side like Walsall at the time, which was rare because there were a lot of defensive changes throughout the season. But just prior to him coming in, it was probably the most settled their backline had been. So for him to kind of come in, replace that, and do so well speaks volumes of the player and the quality that he has. But yeah, just towards the end of the season, there was a game against Doncaster where he maybe looked a little bit off the pace and he was brought out of the side. Didn't play for 3 of the final 4 games and only came on for the last 20 minutes of the final game, which was a 5-1 defeat against Wimbledon. And to be honest, when he came on, I actually thought he was really impressive. By that point, the damage had been done, and he made an important challenge. I remember inside the box to kind of prevent Wimbledon from adding to what was a terrible final day, really. But yeah, I feel although it's difficult to kind of predict whether he can make that step up, I definitely feel that whether it's right now or whether it's in another season's time, there's a player there that will be playing at a higher level and will probably, I would predict, be at the level to play in the Championship.
Just finally, George, him and Walsall, do you think this is the end? Do you think Walsall would like him back? Where do you feel Walsall are with him this summer?
Yeah, it's not something that's necessarily I've heard a great deal about. Unfortunately, I can imagine with his performances that Walsall would love him back though. in terms of any discussions, I've not heard anything at all. One thing I thought that definitely went in Walsall's favour, I spoke about right at the start, was the fact that Walsall had those Drogheda links, and that clearly enabled Walsall to kind of dig in and do a bit of due diligence about his character, and his character was great. I go to the change room, the training ground once or twice a week, and he fitted in right from the start. Was always great to deal with. I know you've spoken to him yourself. So in terms of fitting into the dressing room, he'll have no issues there because he fitted into Walsall so well. So in terms of him coming back, I can't say anything on that, but I can imagine from the evidence of his performances that they would be more than happy to welcome him back.
George, thank you very much. It's brilliant insight. Just finally, let people know where they can find you if they want to keep on top of all things Walsall, which you never know. There may be some more Norwich loanees or even Manny back there next season.
Yeah, so it's on Twitter, G Bennett 1997, and all my articles are on the Express and Star. So there's plenty on there about Manny, and I mentioned about the midfield background and that transition. There's plenty there. So dig through the archives and you'll find it. Really appreciate you talking to me, mate.
Thank you very much for your time, George. Appreciate it.
Cheers, pal.